Welcome to PADNET Presents. I'm your host, Derek J. Simpson, Executive Director of the Long Beach Community Action Partnership. On PADNET Presents, we introduce guests that will inform, engage, and empower you with the stories that they tell. On this particular edition of our program, we have a special guest that has joined us from Washington, D.C. Her name is Jeanie Chaffin. Welcome, Jeanie. And I tried earlier in other conversations to get what I call the alphabet soup of acronyms together, but you're from HHS.
Yes, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
And then we have the Administration for Children and Family Services.
That's right, at HHS.
And then under that is the
Office of Community Services.
And you are the director of that department. And that's very important to us as a community action agency because we receive community service block grant funds and we receive low-income home energy assistance program funds. And out of your department comes those funds and many other programs that we'll talk about as the program goes on. But before you got to Washington, D.C., you're originally from Missouri. Mm-hmm. So can you tell those who really don't know you maybe as well as I do and hope to know you even better after this program, kind of how did your journey progress from where you began in community action to where you are now?
Right. Well, I am from Missouri. I'm from Southwest Missouri, and I was going to college in Springfield, Missouri, and like many people, I needed a summer job. Mm-hmm. And I started casting around, and somehow through an employment and training program that helps folks get summer jobs, I was placed at the local community action agency, Ozarks Area Community Action Corporation. It serves a 10-county area in Southwest Missouri, provides very similar services to Long Beach Community Action. Mm-hmm. And I started there and took energy assistance applications each day and heard the stories and situations that families were facing that caused them to come into our office and need utility assistance. It was really a great learning experience, and I worked for that community action agency for over 10 years and loved it. Ended up going to college at night and getting my degree because I wanted to keep working at the community action agency. Oh, wow. Yeah, it was a great experience. And you know how sometimes you just find a place and you know it's the right place for you? That's what coming to community action was for me. Mm-hmm. The ability of a community action agency to solve problems for local people, to be very creative and innovative and bring different funding streams together. You mentioned that I now have responsibility for several funding streams. You know, there are so many different resources that come into local communities, but they really need to be coordinated and used effectively, and I think that's what I saw at that local community action agency, and really what happens in over 1,000 community action agencies across the country. So I knew when I got there that it was the right place to be. I had no interest in going anywhere else, really. I thought, I've found my career, you know, as an adult. But actually, the state CSBG director, the state community services block grant director, retired and said to me, you know, you ought to apply for this job. You know, this would be a really good opportunity. You could work with all the community action agencies in Missouri. There are 19. And I thought, why would anybody want to go to work for the state? Right. You know, you hear about bureaucrats and bureaucracy, and I thought I have this great job at the Community Action Agency with all this flexibility and ability to be very innovative. But I trusted him. He was a mentor, Charles McCann, and I applied for the job, and I did get it. And so I moved to Jefferson City and managed the Community Services Block Grant and the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, which is a utility assistance program in the state of Missouri for many years. And that was pretty cool because I got to see into all 19 community action agencies, and I got to see the good work that all the agencies in Missouri were doing. And you know, poverty is different in different geographies. Missouri is similar to California in that, you know, you have different issues across the state. And so being able to see how different agencies address those problems and those challenges was very educational. And we did a lot of neat, fun things when I was at the state of Missouri.
And you take that innovation now to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I think so. I feel really lucky and privileged to have the opportunity to work in Washington, D.C. right now. I am a political appointee of the Obama administration, so I serve as long as this administration is in place and help to carry out the policies of President Obama and to work with all the states and all the great community action agencies like Long Beach. It really is a privilege, and as somebody who's worked at the local level and worked at the state level, I feel really privileged when I go into the office every day to bring those different perspectives that aren't always present in Washington, D.C. So I feel like I have a responsibility to represent the states and the local agencies at the Office of Community Services.
How was the transition? You go from your hometown in Missouri there to Jefferson City and now life in the Beltway. Have you found that you've had, and I would imagine you had to move your family, et cetera. How has that transition been for you?
Well, I had a little bit of a period. I didn't go right to federal government. I worked for a national association, the National Association for State Community Service Programs, which is there are a lot of national organizations in Washington, D.C., but NASCAS represents state CSBG directors. So as a state CSBG director, that was a great place for me to be because I kind of knew the issues around CSBG in the states. And that was a good transition because I was moving to D.C., which is obviously very different from Missouri. But I knew my subject matter, I knew colleagues, and that was helpful. At the time I was single, so I didn't have the family issues, and that made it a little bit easier. But I loved working at NASCAS, and one of the things I love about working at OCS now is to be able to see what's going on in different states. And just like when I moved to Jeff City and I could see those 19 community action agencies, now I get to see all 50 states and tribal areas and territories and independent community action agencies, and there's so much variance around the country. Some of the issues are the same. Inequality is a great challenge, everywhere across our country, and poverty and child poverty is too high everywhere. But then you have really unique conditions based on the demographics or the geography of different places, and sort of getting to understand that and see how different people are solving those issues is really a blessing.
Well, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, you mentioned tribal scenarios and 50 states, so your travel schedule must be ridiculous at times.
Well, I like to get out, just like I was here today at Long Beach Community Action Agency and was able to talk to you and your staff and find out, what you're doing to help youth create opportunity, and your great work here at the station. So traveling is really important because I think it's important to see what's going on in different places. And but there's a lot of stuff going on. Things are very busy back at the office. So I really do try to balance my travel. It's a constant kind of tension between needing to be in the office and getting out and seeing what people are doing. But we've been working on a lot of reforms with the Community Services Block Grant. And so I have felt like that I needed to be in the office to sort of promote those and work on those. So I maybe have traveled a little less than some other folks because you've just got to look at your priorities.
When you do that travel and you go to sort of maybe the tribal communities versus maybe a major urban area like the LA area or Long Beach, do you find, especially when you talk about youth, that some of the issues facing them are very similar or in fact very different?
Right. So I last year was in a very rural area of Nebraska. And we were looking at the issue of homelessness, and we were finding that many of the young homeless people that we were talking to had been in foster care, and had gotten out of foster care and sort of become adults, but later on were experiencing homelessness. And this was a very rural area of Nebraska that was facing this issue, and we have a lot of youth homelessness in urban areas too. So some of the issues are the same, I think some of the causes and conditions are different. You know, in rural areas, yeah, transportation, the lack of services, some of those things are, you know, higher causes of problems than maybe in urban areas, but there's something else creating the problem in an urban area. So I think you see different aspects of things when you go out into the different areas of the country.
So when you are able to get back home and wherever home might be at the given time and relax, what would one find Jeanie doing to
oh my gosh,
just
Derek.
clear all of this for a moment and let that creativity come in?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I actually live out in Virginia, in Northern Virginia now, and out in the suburbs. And what do I do? Well, I always joke that community action has always been my hobby. So
So you never have to go to work.
Well, when you enjoy what you do, you're always working, right? But I'm engaged, and Brian has two. Thank you. We're going to get married in June, so that'll be an exciting thing this year. Brian has two young boys, Alexi and Nathan, and so like a lot of folks, when I'm not working, there's a lot to be done around the house, and soccer and robotics and all kinds of things going on that need to be attended to.
Okay, so the next generation of community action advocates is in the works then, right?
I think they prefer math to the social sciences, so we're going to have to work pretty hard to get them interested in some of this.
Right. Now, we're going to take a break shortly, but when we come back, I'd like to find out more about what you're seeing in terms of similarities or not, and what some of the challenges might be as you look at other community action agencies such as ours. I know our team was just elated to hear that you were actually going to have the time to come by and have a visit with us when you were in town. And I know that you're here for a larger conference. And I would imagine that those conferences allow time for great ideas to sort of percolate among us when you get to the different areas of the country. Would you agree that that's that moment in time where those ideas can really be shared in a special way?
Oh, absolutely. I am a big believer in sharing best practices and innovation. And you know, when people can see that something is working one place, I think it's easier for them to adopt a different practice in their home, you know, site.
Right. Well, we're going to talk more about that. As you can see, someone who we're all very proud nationally to have as our leader, Jeanie Chaffin, and we hope that you stay tuned and hear more about what she has to share about CSBG and other programs that she's responsible for.
I like the variety. One day we could be working on filming a TV show, talk show here in the studio. Other days we could be taking some of the equipment out in the field and filming something out there. We could be editing.
It's been cool to work in the studio and all that and learning about lighting, audio, and camera work. I think that working for PADNET or being an intern has been really great. If you're looking for an internship, PADNET would be a great place to start.
Hello, I'm Barry Kogert with the Jazz Angels. We've created an environment where seasoned jazz professionals and young students perform side by side. Our students range in age from 10 to 19 and come from a wide variety of backgrounds and schools. The jazz bands are organized by skill level rather than age. If you want to have a positive impact on our youth, get involved with the Jazz Angel team or make a tax-deductible donation. Please visit www.jazzangel.org or call 562-981-8410. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deborah. Are you tired of coming home to an empty, lonely house? Why not try Animal Match Rescue Team? We are a small dog rescue group in Long Beach. AMRT is looking for loving homes and has a variety of small dogs to choose from. Just come to Petco, 6500 PCH, any weekend from 11 to 2 to see just a few of our little dogs. To find out how you could adopt, foster, volunteer, or donate, go to amrt.net. 100% of all proceeds go to our animals. Right, Pearl? You'll be glad you did.
Welcome back to PADNET Presents. I'm your host, Derek Simpson, Executive Director of the Long Beach Community Action Partnership. And on this particular program, we are pleased to have joining us Jeanie Chaffin, and she's been talking with us about that transition from life in Missouri to life in the Beltway, I guess as they would call it, and announced the wedding coming up in June, and I'll keep checking my mail for the invite because I know it's going to be a nice one. But Jeanie, when we talk about community action agencies around the United States and just the whole mission and vision of community action, we realize that there are many who help people who are low income, or many who would say that they're in business to fight poverty. And I realize in order for us to continue to get our funding as it comes from the federal government and get the support that we need politically, we have to really show our relevance and really show that we are here to serve in an innovative way and keep evolving with the needs of the day and the times. So with all of that said, are there any particular agencies as you do your travels that sort of stand out to show it as an example of saying, you know what, if it's not just the program that they're doing, it's the attitude that they're taking as an agency that maybe we should really pay attention to?
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, Derek, about attitude or kind of vision, or the way an agency sees the world and sees their role in it. I think that really is important. And if you go back to 1964, when this whole movement was created out of the War on Poverty, the original legislation, the Economic Opportunity Act, talked about coordinating a wide range of federal, state, and local dollars. And if you read further, it talks about creating opportunity, not just serving individuals, but addressing community-wide problems. And I'd say the best agencies, the strongest agencies that I see, are still taking that approach. They really look out into their community at what the issues are today and think about what can we as an agency do about these problems, whether they're problems individuals face or community level problems. And I'm a very strong believer in, poverty isn't just caused by individuals, that there are a lot of things in our country that work against people who, have maybe not made the best decisions, but a lot of us make poor decisions along the way, right? But for some folks, the community, the neighborhood, their school really work against them. And I think our best agencies get at this issue, and they try to put together very comprehensive, coordinated services. There are particular agencies that I think are doing very cutting-edge, innovative work. I always tell people to go talk to Dwayne Yoder at Garrett County Community Action Agency in Maryland. They're doing a very intensive program where they serve both parents and children in their Head Start. It's called a two-generation approach, and that's a lot of people think that has a lot of promise right now to break the cycle of poverty when you work with both kids in an early education environment and then really work intensively with the parents. We have agencies around the country that are, very innovative in the community development field, that, build affordable housing, who use funding in a very entrepreneurial way to bring in new business, to create jobs in their communities. And so there's a lot of great stuff. I think that sometimes people see these community action agencies that have maybe been around for a while and think they must not be doing anything innovative or creative because they've been around a while. But I don't think that that's the case. I think there's a lot of agencies doing really good work that have been very relevant in their communities and achieved a lot and continue to today.
When you look back at 2014, excuse me, and you think about all that occurred in our 50th anniversary year, what stands out in your mind as being special in that year?
I think we saw a lot of community action agencies really reflecting back on what they had achieved over the last 50 years. You know, many of these community action agencies were started in 1964, and they have been in local communities for some time. And I saw a lot of agencies you know, looking back at what they had achieved, but then thinking about what do we want to achieve moving forward. And I think one of the great things about last year and commemorating the 50th anniversary of the War on Poverty was really reflecting on the past, but thinking about where are we going to go in the future, and what are we doing today that is still important, but what do we need to do tomorrow. And I think that's a really positive thing that came out of a lot of the events and activities of last year.
Speaking of going forward, when you think about your department, OCS, what do you see on the horizon for you in the year to come?
Yeah, well, OCS, Office of Community Services, is really a small office. We have about 50 staff, and we are responsible for over $7 billion in federal money that goes out to states, tribes, and territories.
$7 billion.
Yes, that's a B. A lot of that is the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP, but we also are responsible for the Social Services Block Grant, which is a very flexible block grant to states that states use to support everything from child welfare to Meals on Wheels. Very important program for the safety net across the country. Assets for Independence is a match savings account program that we have that nonprofits can apply for and help low-income people save to buy a home, to go to school, or to start a small business. It's really about helping people develop assets. You know, poverty isn't just about a lack of income, but it's also about not having the assets that you need. So we have a lot of different programs in the Office of Community Services, and I think what we're focused on really over the next 2 years is implementing some reforms in the Community Services Block Grant that will establish organizational standards for the community action agencies around the country. It's really a way for us to say, you know, these are the standards that need to be present for a community action agency to be effective and efficient. And so we're working on guidance and technical assistance and training in this space that's going to be a big priority for us in the next couple years.
And speaking of those standards, I mean, that's something that is sort of like self-checking to be sure that from the outside looking in, it's apparent that we're really doing a good job of staying the course. Would you agree?
Yes, yes. I think that these standards have been developed by community action agencies and states themselves, which is really, I think, a testament to the Community Action Network's commitment to being high quality. I think that it's sort of like, hopefully states and agencies will implement these and it'll be sort of a good housekeeping seal of approval, right? That if an agency has met these standards, we know that they have at least have the basics covered that they need to be effective and efficient. And I think that's a pretty big deal. You know, a lot of these things are just rules or regulations or laws, but they've all been gathered up into kind of one set of standards that we're going to be encouraging states to use in the next couple years.
What's the reception been around the nation?
You know, impressive, really. The Community Action Network has really stepped up and said, you know, we want to do this self-assessment. We want to make sure that people understand that we are very accountable, that we comply with these rules, these regulations. I think the reception's been pretty positive. With any big change in the beginning, I think there's a little nervousness about, well, what's going to happen if we don't meet standards, and you know, how will these be enforced? But we're trying to deal with that through training and policy guidance, and I think the network is going to be really positioned to achieve some great things in the future with this good, solid foundation.
We've talked a lot about CSBG and LIHEAP in that regard. One more question, I guess, in that regard in terms of CSBG. If you look at the standards and you look at everything that has been and the way things are now, if you could wave your wand, is there any particular elements of CSBG that you say, wow, if I could really just make these things happen, we could really go to the next level? Does that ever come to mind?
Oh my gosh, I have so many ideas. As I was joking with your staff today about, I just have so many ideas popping into my head when they were sharing some of the work that you guys are doing. But I think really there really are so many opportunities out there for community action agencies, but I would probably bring it home to the basics and go back to my comment earlier about what do some of our strongest agencies look like, and they are really providing coordinated, comprehensive services. They're trying to address poverty on not only an individual or family level, but on a community level. I think if we could, the more agencies that we can get really pointed in that direction, just the more impactful we can be. Derek, I think that these issues that we deal with today, inequality, families that live in communities where the opportunity isn't really what it should be, these are really complex, wicked problems. And they can't be solved by one agency, one funding source, one silver bullet program. They really have to be addressed on a wide, collective community level with a lot of different organizations coming together and being very intentional. So I guess if I could wave my wand, I would say let's get more agencies, let's get more community members sort of working in that vein, because I think that's how we're going to really make change.
And I would agree with you, and I would say that that's probably going to be one of our greatest challenges, simply because people tend to want to work in their silo and are afraid if they share too much about what they consider their secret to success, that the next guy might try to hone in on part of what they're doing. But I would agree that as a community, the issues are much more easily resolved than as any one individual agency addressing that. And if we as community action could position ourselves, as you mentioned in the earlier conversation, as the leading agency within that community, that would be great.
Right. I think there always needs to be, in any community collaborative, you need certain things. You need an organization kind of calling people together, tracking, reporting, and I think community action agencies can serve that role well.
We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and join Jeanie Chaffin with more conversation about community action and what we're doing to serve our relevant communities. Thank you.
Here live in the mix at the Pacific Ballroom here at the Long Beach Arena.
I think it's one of the most spectacular things we've had in Long Beach for years and years and years and years.
This space looks like you could do anything.
I think it's already created a buzz and an action and excitement for the downtown area.
Welcome back to PADNET Presents. I'm your host, Derek J. Simpson. I'm also the Executive Director of the Long Beach Community Action Partnership, and that's important to us here at PADNET because without the Long Beach Community Action Partnership, there would be no PADNET, and so it's important to you as well. And on this particular edition of our program, we have a special guest who is really working at the federal level to help us as a community action agency be innovative and creative in what we do to serve our community, and that's Jeanie Chaffin. Thanks again, Jeanie, for being with us. We've had a great conversation so far. One of the things I'd like to ask about is every great company and even individuals these days have a mission statement, and within your mission statement you talked a lot about partnerships with the states and the tribes and territories, and maybe I could start, just explain to people when we talk about territories and tribes, just what does that entail in terms of service areas?
Right. So I mentioned that we have the Community Services Block Grant, the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP, which is a block grant that goes out to states. It also goes to tribes and territories to help their citizens meet utility assistance needs. So you may have somebody on a reservation that doesn't have propane, and the tribe will use the LIHEAP money to help them get assistance. And funding goes to Puerto Rico and Northern Mariana Islands and other territories for utility assistance too. I mentioned Social Services Block Grant, which also goes to states, and then we have two discretionary programs which are competitive and nonprofits can apply for those, and that's the Assets for Independence, which is the match savings program, and then one I haven't mentioned, which is the Community Economic Development Program, which is a discretionary funding that community development corporations can apply for and do investment to create jobs in distressed areas around the country. But really, at OCS, we have a lot of these funding resources that come from Congress, and we're responsible for implementing them. But we really see our role as building the capacity of states, tribes, or territories to meet the purposes of these various funding sources. So we do a lot of technical assistance to states or tribes or territories. We also have a compliance function. We have to monitor states, monitor our discretionary grantees to make sure they're using the funding appropriately. So that's not just about building capacity, but making sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. We're really trying to modernize a lot of our data and our information sharing at OCS. We have been a little slow to get reports out and share information. We haven't, the federal government's sometimes not the best at upgrading IT and some of those things. So since I've been at OCS, we've been putting a focus on, how can we get better data, make it more transparent, make it more public through our website and other places so that people have information to make better decisions.
I would imagine the actual internal process of looking at how we're being efficient with those funds is important, especially with the political climate changing and showing that what we're doing is a good use of the people's tax dollars, right?
Absolutely. I think, this administration has been very focused on using evidence to fund what works. And I think in the president's first inaugural address, he said we're going to look at what works, and where things work, we're going to do more of it, and where things don't work, we're going to reallocate those dollars. And this administration, I think, has really followed through on that and been very serious about, what does research, what does evaluation tell us is working. And that is really important today, Derek, because of the funding situation we're in. We can't waste any dollar. We've got to put the dollars where we know they're going to make a difference. And that, I think, is only going, that pressure, that urgency is only going to continue as we move forward into even, more challenging budget times than we've had. So That's challenging because for a lot of programs that you and I are familiar with, there hasn't been really hard, concrete research done on it. So we sometimes have to think about other ways to show what difference we're making. And that's some of what we've been doing with CSBG lately, is thinking about are there different ways to measure our performance so that we can show what difference community action agencies are making.
Do you feel comfortable with the progress as it's going so far, knowing that evidence-based results, et cetera, are such a focus as you kind of peel back the onion, so to speak?
Well, I wish we could move faster. But who doesn't wish that? Usually. I think we're making some progress. I think we've had a lot of support from the Community Action Network to think about these performance measures that we currently use. I think in the next year we were going to make some good breakthroughs that I feel hopeful about. So we'll be doing that, and then I think we're going to have to, as a network, think about how do we do some really serious research and studies of community action and some of the work that's achieved through the Community Services Block Grant. And that's probably going to need to be a partnership between the federal government, states, and local agencies, because that does cost, and we'll have to figure out how to get the resources to do some of that.
I was really pleased that you were able to come here to our agency here in Long Beach, California, because you're that name. It's like Jeanie Chaffin. Oh my God, she's coming, right? But I mean, you started at the bottom, as we were talking before the show, and you came up through the ranks. And I think it's important for people to know and see and hear from you what the people who don't get to come to the conferences need to know back home, that their work is relevant on the front lines, and how that work translates to results that you see at your level that we all have to be mindful of and proud of as we continue on this movement.
Right, right. I mean, I'm such a lucky person because I get to see all those connections, and not everybody does.
They don't.
Right. So I feel very blessed, but I hope I do a somewhat decent job of conveying to folks around the country, why it's important that we measure, why it's important that we have standards, and that is all. Although that may not look real apparent here on the ground in Long Beach or in Springfield, Missouri, or in Minnesota, it really does matter back in Washington, and people really do look at that. We're working on the 2016 budget right now. Wow. And we have information in there about what kind of results community action has achieved. On the LIHEAP program, we just are putting in place some new performance measures that will look at how much are we really reducing energy burden for low-income people, and is it enough, or do we need to do better? And so all those things people look at, and when decisions about the budget are made, those things are taken into account. I didn't really realize until I got to HHS and to ACF that just, you know it intellectually that there's a lot of difficult budgeting decisions that have to be made. But until you're sort of there and you see people grappling with, well, do we do A or do we do B? Because we can't do both. And nobody likes to make those decisions. George Sheldon, who was the acting assistant secretary when I came to ACF, said there have been better times to be acting assistant secretary of ACF, because he did have to make some difficult funding decisions. We were in the period after the recession, and things were tight, and there are a lot of good programs out there. So the results, the performance stuff, the evidence really is important, and I hope I do a fairly decent job of conveying that to folks who are on the ground, doing important work that is is important for
Well,
sure.
your passion is evident. You know, when people do get that opportunity to meet you, I guess it's how do we split you up in enough pieces to get you all around for all of us to hear
Well,
and
that's very
see. And you mentioned LIHEAP, and that's a major program, and especially this time of the year when you're having severe weather conditions, and in terms of the cold, and in the summer out here it's the heat. Yeah. In that particular program, are you pleased with the way things are moving thus far?
Yeah, we've been doing some really good work. I mentioned the performance measures that we've developed, and those have been developed with a committee of state LIHEAP directors from around the country over the last couple years. And they really try to put in place measures that will let us see if the program is achieving what it was designed to do, which is to reduce the energy burden of low-income households. That's a critical program. You know, I mentioned before that, you know, it's generally not one program that's going to change somebody's life. And, you know, but LIHEAP, in addition to Head Start, to some vocational training, and several other things, can be really important to a family. It's pretty hard to get up and go to school or to a job if your utilities are shut off. And, you know, the fact is that some families, you know, even when they're working, it's not enough to pay both the rent and the utilities and the food and some child care and those kind of things. So I think, you know, LIHEAP is an important program. If we can have some better data to show what LIHEAP really achieves, we're also going to be looking at how many cutoffs did we prevent, how many people were without assistance, that we restored assistance. And I think having that data will be a very positive thing for making the case for why it's important. And that's important in Washington.
I understand. Numbers make the difference in that regard, for sure. You mentioned other things in the strategic plan for OCS, and we're close to another break, and I don't want to get into all the detail of that. Actually, it'll be our last break before the end of the show, and I still have so many more questions for you, so we've got to get you to fly back out here again. But in a quick statement, you mentioned entrepreneurial opportunities. Why is that important to you when you think about poverty?
Right.
You know what? In fact, before you even get into that, because I can see that that's going to be a profound answer, we're going to take a quick break. Okay. And when we come back, we're going to ask Jeanie to expand upon more why she believes and her department believes that entrepreneurial opportunities for those that are living in poverty are important to come out and be in self-sufficiency on this edition of PADNET Presents.
My name is Tari Shakur. I'm a youth organizer with Youth Justice Coalition. Our 1% campaign focuses on taking 1% of the budget used for LAPD, LA City Attorneys, Sheriffs, County, and Probation. This equals to $100 million a year. That's enough to fund 25,000 youth jobs, 50 youth centers, and 500 peacekeepers in schools and on the street, therefore decreasing the school-to-prison pipeline and mass incarceration of people of color in general. Visit youthforjustice.org to learn more about the campaign and get involved.
It's very pet friendly. Everybody has a dog in Long Beach. It's Dog City.
Well, there's everything to do here. You got the Pike, you got Queen Mary, you got the beaches, you got paddle boarding, surfing. You go half a mile that way, you got surfing, you got downtown.
I just think it's the most incredible, most beautiful, most unique city, which has so much to offer. So I love it here and I'll never leave.
Artful Thinking is a Long Beach-based nonprofit founded in 2010 to create artful events that educate the public about HIV and breast cancer while raising funds to support those services. Since then, we have brought Long Beach 2 successful comedy nights with Paula Poundstone and the monthly film series Out at the Movies, which featured appearances by Lily Tomlin as well as others. Beneficiaries include the Woman to Woman campaign in Long Beach, the Christina Applegate Foundation, St. Mary's Hospital's CARE program, the AIDS Assistance Foundation, the AIDS Food Store. Contact us at info@artfulthinking.org. Thank you.
Welcome back to PADNET Presents. I'm your host, Derek J. Simpson, Executive Director of the Long Beach Community Action Partnership. And we've been having a great conversation with Jeanie Chaffin, who is the Director of OCS and the federal government that actually funds all of us at the state and local levels here with Community Service Block Grants. Thank you so much for everything that you and your team do. We've been using acronyms, OCS, ACF, all of these different acronyms, but for those who are watching, to bring it back to where we began, our mission is to help, I tell people, to help families move from poverty to self-sufficiency. And there are many agencies in any given community that address the elements of poverty, and I know that one tool to do that, most importantly, is education, to have a sound education. But as you said earlier, you have to go home, and so when that child goes home from that educational experience, it has to be a safe and nurturing environment as well. Right. So we have to kind of start with that home unit. But you mentioned entrepreneurism in your strategic plan, and here at Long Beach Community Action Partnership, in our teen program, I'm a big advocate of entrepreneurial endeavors. Why do you feel that that's important at the federal level?
Well, our Assets for Independence program allows people to save to start a business or to buy a home or to further their education. So it's multiple ways that we support people to gain an asset, develop an asset. And you know, people are in different places in their life and have different skills and gifts and abilities. And for some people, you know, who may be very creative, very innovative themselves, you know, starting a small business, you know, may be a great way to help them move up and out. And so we, you know, we think it's one of, you know, multiple possibilities for people depending on where they're at. A lot of our grantees that get Assets for Independence money and are helping people to start a small business, they'll do training. So while the person is saving, they're preparing them to have the skills that they need to be successful. I think working with youth, your work here at Long Beach, to think about being entrepreneurial has a lot of great qualities to it, because, you know, whether they end up going and starting their own business or not, they're learning some great skills, money management, you know, being innovative, creative. All of those skills will serve you well whether you start your own business or you work for somebody else in today's economy. So I think it's all about helping people develop capacities, and I think that's really important. You know, I mentioned earlier that, you know, sometimes people live in communities where maybe there haven't been a lot of opportunities for them to develop, and so we have to kind of go back and help people do that. And I think that that's important. I also think at the same time, I mentioned this earlier, we need to be thinking about why that community doesn't help develop capacities of its young people or capacities of even adults in that community. Because we just, you know, for America to continue to be great, and for us to be successful, we need the gifts of everybody. We can't have anybody sitting on the sidelines moving forward. We're going to need everybody's labor, and we need communities that when people do labor, they can support families and have healthy families and healthy lives. And so I really think that's the overall picture of where we've got to go moving forward.
We both know a community action icon, Lois Carson, and as I heard you talking, yes. She had this saying that I always repeat, you know, and she says, you're either at the table or on the menu. And I'd always much rather be at the table. And her point was that, you know, people who are in poverty also have to be at the table when it comes to policy, when it comes to what are the best programs, as opposed to us assuming that we know. And I think Community Action does a good job of that, of reaching out, in our community action plans to ensure that to the best of our ability, we're not just in a vacuum creating these programs, but in fact we've reached out to our local communities to ensure that we're providing what's really needed. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I think you're hitting on one of the unique things about community action and the Community Services Block Grant is that the boards for those 1,000 community action agencies are mandated to include representatives of the low-income community, and the whole point is that they have a voice in the planning and decision making about what that community action agency is going to do. In 1964, when that was created, that was sort of revolutionary. We sort of take it for granted now. You always include people in the decision making, right? That's sort of a common ethic, but back then it was pretty revolutionary. I think it's a unique thing that community action has sort of stuck to that, and the best agencies, I think, consider and proceed in a robust way in that area. I think the more that you can tap into the wisdom of your low-income board members, the better off the agency will be. Great agencies have great boards of directors, and not only low-income board members, but private sector members and public officials, because it takes all of those different sectors, again, to really solve the problems that we've been talking about today.
When you think about boards of directors, if there were a board member of a local community action agency or someone who was contemplating getting more civically engaged, what would you say to them about the importance of them, regardless of which one of those roles, in a tripartite board? What would you say to encourage them to A, join a board, and B, about the significance of their role on a board?
Well, do we have another hour to talk, Derek, about this? I mean, when you think about our world today, I think so many people are looking for ways to make meaning, to have, for things to be more meaningful in our lives. And I think, giving your service on a board is a great way to add, you'll get more out of it than you ever give. And especially if you really get engaged in the work of the agency. The community action agencies are really changing people's lives and changing communities, and why wouldn't you want to be a part of that? Yeah, you're going to have to come to some board meetings, and you're going to have to study some financials, and you may have to help plan some fundraisers, but you're going to see where that money goes and the difference it makes, and I think it's going to be very rewarding for people. So I would encourage them to do it. I would also say that we're facing a period in in just the demographics of our country. We have a lot of baby boomers retiring who, maybe they're leaving a career or a job, but, they still want to contribute to their community. And I'd say to those folks, you all would make perfect board members because you've had successful careers and done and achieved things in your life, and now maybe you have time to sort of give back. So call up your local community action agency and volunteer. Yeah.
Which some people need to understand, it may not always be called community action agency. It may be operating under a different name.
Absolutely.
But behind the scenes, it's actually community action that's really making things happen, and that's one thing we try to get out. We have about 4 minutes left, and no one agency, whether it be community action or otherwise, can do it on their own. So when you think about speaking to community action agencies or any other nonprofit executive that might be listening to a show such as this, speak to the point of, from your desk, the importance of getting outside of I say leave egos and logos at the door. Let's focus on the greater good. Can you speak to how you would like to see that happen in an ideal world? I know we talk about promise zones and other initiatives, but
definitely this administration has tried to facilitate local community folks getting together and setting a very concrete goal in their community to work towards it, whether it's promised neighborhoods or promised zones or strengthening communities, lots of different, there's a real belief that works, and I believe in that, and I think that's a key ethic of community action. So whether you're a community action leader or a community action frontline member or somebody in another nonprofit, I just think it's really important to get out and talk to folks at the school, talk to folks at the hospital, look at what shared agendas you can identify and work towards achieving together. Whether it's better health for the community or getting more people, more of your students into college, or reducing the number of emergency room visits in a community. I mean, there's so many things that if we work together, we will be so much more successful at. But that's going to take people, stepping out of the office and building good partnerships. And where we see success, you see people doing that, coming together around a shared agenda, figuring out how to measure whether they're achieving it, and then all bringing different pieces of the puzzle together to really put solutions in place locally. So I think that's where we'll really exponentially increase our impact if we can do more of that.
Yeah, you mentioned hospitals, and I know our agency was approached by a local hospital and said that they had identified about 19 or 20 youth in that hospital's population that they serve that were costing the hospital about $5 million a year in repeat emergency room visits because they weren't being proactive and staying on top of their meds and coming in for checkups and felt like maybe working with our teen program that we could engage them in a positive way that would keep them connected, and then they could have possibly doctors and nurses and other staff come and partner with us to make to have those youth blend in with our teens, but also become stronger and more healthy, and thus reduce the emergency room visits. And I just thought, wow, you do what you do because you believe in the mission, but you don't realize how that drop of a thought or an action has a ripple effect throughout the community. I want you to know that what you do has had a ripple effect throughout the nation. And we're all very proud of your leadership. I didn't know who you were when they said your name the first time, but I've learned since then that you're a powerful force to be reckoned with, and just a great person to hang out with and talk to, especially about community action. We're out of time. But yeah, I know. But we have other times when you come back. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on this edition of PADNET Presents. We've enjoyed speaking with Jeanie Chaffin, and we've enjoyed having you with us once again as a loyal viewer of PADNET Presents. Thank you so much for joining us.